What's up, everyone? This is Raphael Garcia here with Schwan Humes for episode number 228 of the MMA Ratings podcast. We have a big pay-per-view to preview today and give some predictions on top of that. But before we do, I always want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you find our content. You can check us out at our flagship, first and foremost, at MMAratings.net and .com. You can hit us up on social media at MMA in both spaces. Check us out across all podcasting platforms. Search for MMA Ratings, and also check us out on YouTube. Give us a good subscription there, and join us at MMA Ratings on YouTube as well. Myself, you can find me at rgarcia_sports on social media. Schwan, you can hit it with a black turned green. Schwan, let everybody know how you're doing.
Not too bad. Just chilling as always. You know me, staying busy, staying out of trouble.
Our girls out the house.
Trying to get my kids not to come back home. They're talking about weather and where they're at is getting bad. And they don't want to be around the people they're around. I'm like, that's why you move. So you didn't have to be around me. So
Tell them to tough it out. Tell them to tough it out. They'll be all right.
I'm just not answering my phone.
And chill.
Just not answering my phone. Tell their mom not to answer her phone either.
Listen, you should change your number.
I thought about that, but my parents already got on me for doing that the last 2 times. So
once they move out, just change your number. Be like, yo, we don't live here anymore.
Yeah, I'm really considering that, but we'll see.
So, all right, let's talk MMA because we have a very big pay-per-view to preview this weekend. But before we talk about the matches themselves, I want to ask a question first and foremost. So the UFC has increased their pay-per-view cost. I believe it's $70, $75, one of the two now. And I want to say it's increased every 3 years or so. The amount of money it's cost, the show's costs go up. Dana White says it's all on you on the ESPN decision makers who made that call. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that piece. But let me ask you a question. Just looking at the card itself, is this card worth $70? Why or why not?
I don't think so. I mean, it's like I said for a while, what UFC is doing is the same thing they accuse boxing of doing. They're basically having an event which got maybe 2 or 3 fights that are pay-per-view worthy, and the rest of the fights, could be on a fight night or something like that. It's not big event kind of fight. So this is the biggest heavyweight fight they've had in a while. Might be one of the top 3 or 4 of all time as far as importance and dominance of the people involved in it. And then of course you got the Moreno versus Figueiredo fight. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey,
yeah,
Schwan, you froze for a second. Start back talking about the heavyweight fight.
Yeah, the heavyweight fight. Basically, they're selling this on the back of the heavyweight fight, which is probably one of the top 5 to 7 most important heavyweight fights as far as guys who are dominant, and both guys have titles. And they're building it around the Moreno fight with the Figueiredo fight. So it's basically it's a 2-fight card as far as what's pay-per-view worthy. The rest of these fights can be on a fight night or a much smaller card. This doesn't have to be pay-per-view. So they're doing the same thing they accuse boxing of doing. They're stacking the card with 2 big, a main event and a co-main event, and just giving you whatever they have left to fill out a card with, basically. I mean, they could have taken some of the main events from the past couple fight nights and put that on this card and made it a truly stacked card. But the UFC is not trying to do that. They're just trying to fulfill their contractual obligations. So we're getting a pay-per-view event that outside of the 2 fights at the very top of it isn't really pay-per-view worthy.
Yeah, I wasn't really too what's the word I want to use? I didn't know what this card consisted of other than the main and co-main event until I was getting ready for today's show. I see Kay Hansen's there. We'll talk about her later. I see that Rodolfo Vieira is coming back and finally fighting again. So I will talk about that for a second too. But outside of these 2 title fights, which are 2 very good title fights, if I must say so, I am not concerned, but I'm interested in seeing how the UFC goes forward with their pay-per-view strategy, especially after the price increase. I don't think we're going to see a drop-off in buys. I think that they're going to stay probably about where they were beforehand, with shows maybe averaging between 300 and 400, 500, except for the big fights. But yeah, that's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's a lot of money for the target audience of MMA as a whole.
Yeah, the biggest thing about it is, everybody says the pay-per-views don't matter and the money doesn't matter because now the UFC's with ESPN, and that's fine for the UFC because they get a certain amount of money regardless. So it's very hard for them to lose money on it as long as they fulfill their contractual obligations. But nobody thinks about it as it pertains to the ESPN, because ESPN, for them to continually pay out, they have to make up some of that money somewhere. And not every pay-per-view event is going to be 1 million buys, even 500,000 buys or 750,000 buys or anything like that. So they have to make up that money somewhere. So you're going to see, I would think sometime next year you might have another price raise, to be quite honest, because like I said, they have to pay out a certain amount of money regardless of the card, regardless of the rating, regardless of what kind of pay-per-view fight it is, because they're paying for content. So they have to make up that money somehow when they're constantly putting money out now. So maybe the UFC isn't in charge of it right now because the UFC is getting a steady paycheck from ESPN regardless. But ESPN's footing that bill, so now they need to make some of this money up because every pay-per-view is not a 500,000 plus seller. So they lose money on some of these.
Very true there, sir. Very true. So let's go ahead and jump into previewing, this card. We have a big main event here. Francis Ngannou, the lineal UFC heavyweight champion, is facing off against Cyril Gane, who is the interim heavyweight champion. You have two black men fighting for the title, one being French and the other being from Cameroon. Is he from? He's from Cameroon, right? Or Nigeria?
Yeah, he's correctly, yeah.
Okay, so let's break this down here. I'll tell you who I feel like is going to win at the end, but you always go first. Let's break this down. Let us know who you think is going to win and why.
I mean, on paper, it seems like Gane is the tougher fighter. He's a world class striker. I don't know that he's truly world class in that sense, but he's a world class striker. He's a high level athlete. I don't know that he's the biggest hitter in the world, to be quite honest, but he's super technical. He's hard to hit. He's very strategic. He's patient. He's athletic. He's shown some ground skills. He's shown some, striking at range. He's shown the ability to pick guys apart. He's shown the ability to break guys down. So you would say that Gane is by far and away the best fighter as far as over what he's shown and the balance of skills he's shown and the depth of skills he's shown. And once again, but it's really hard for me to favor him because I haven't seen him work through any adversity. And the biggest problem is he's had the advantages in every single fight he's been in. Even against Derrick Lewis, he's a better technical striker than Lewis. He's probably a better grappler than Lewis. He's a better athlete than Lewis. He's more mobile than Lewis, So it's like there weren't a lot of areas that Lewis could exploit because a lot of Lewis's success is based off A, his power, and B, his IQ. He has little tricks and little things he does to create the openings for those powerful, albeit somewhat technically limited strikes that he lands. And against a guy who's so much better than you technically, a lot of those little tricks aren't work, pressuring someone to the fence, the jump kicks he used to back guys up so he can land the big right hand or the big left hand or the, loading up for one shot to walk you into another one. That's stuff that confuses strikers of a certain caliber or people who are non-strikers. Against a high-level striker, all those little tricks and I look down, go look low, go high, that doesn't fool them at all. You have to be 10 times the athlete they are to get that off, and he's not. And all the other guys Gane has beaten have been, first-class UFC heavyweights, but not really in his tier as far as their skill or their athleticism. Volkov wasn't really in his range. The closest would have been Rosenstruck, but even he didn't really have the style, and he wasn't willing to take a certain amount of punishment to get his shots off. So in thinking about this, I really favor Ngannou, not really because of a technical level, but they trained years ago. I know years before they trained together. I would feel that Ngannou has actually improved more than Gane has because he had more to improve. He was just a big guy with dynamic athleticism who would land big shots. He was a counterpuncher. He didn't really set his shots up. He didn't really have a lot of craft to his footwork or his positioning or even his delivery. He was a guy who was learning on the job, getting by because he was such a dynamic athlete with such great power. I feel like in the past 2 years, you've seen a lot of growth as far as how he sets his shots up, how he handles being pressured, how he handles being in bad spots, how he defends being in bad spots. It's been not so much technical growth, even though he's gotten better technically. It's just a better sense of awareness and a better sense of poise in how he fights. And I know that in a bad spot, even if he's getting beaten from pillar to post and he's dead tired, I know that he'll fight through. We saw against Stipe, he was dead tired, getting taken down. He was still swinging. He was still fighting. He was still finding avenues to compete in the fight. I have no idea what Gane does if a guy punishes him, if he gets hit with a big shot, if he can't get away from a guy's strikes, if he gets taken down and has to work his way back up and can't just easily get a submission or easily get a reversal. He hasn't faced a guy who's anywhere near his athleticism. He hasn't faced a guy with enough experience or broad enough skill set to really test him past a certain point. And Ngannou, for all his flaws, has actually faced the better caliber fighter with a broader range of skills. So I know what he's going to do as far as when he starts getting in bad spots. Now, could he still get knocked out? Obviously, same thing goes for Gane. But I'm probably going to favor Ngannou if no other reason that he's been in tough spots and he's had to work through. And at some point, Cyril is going to be tested. We have no idea what he's going to do when he's tested. We have literally no idea what's going to happen if somebody cracks him really hard in the face because nobody's really done it. We don't know what's going to happen if somebody starts kicking him to the legs and punishing him to the body. We don't know if he'll fold. We don't know if he'll stand up. On paper, he should be able to handle it, but that's on paper. And we've seen a lot of guys who on paper should be able to handle situations they're put in. And as soon as they get into them, they are no longer the fighter they were before, and they're no longer as dominant, or they're no longer as poised, or they're no longer as technical. But the biggest advantage, I think both guys have a feel for one another. But I think with Cyril, the advantage he has is a lot of guys haven't seen his style. They have no idea how to approach it because most heavyweights aren't light on their feet. They're not super technical. They're not super athletic. Ngannou at least has a point of reference with Cyril's style. He's a point of reference. And even though I know, once again, Cyril has improved, I'm going to say that I think Ngannou's improved more in his overall skill set, both striking, transitioning, and in wrestling and grappling. So I would say that he's probably made the bigger improvements. He's obviously beating the better opposition. So my reasons for picking him are just basically off of a poise and a mental toughness that comes from being tested. I don't know that. I have no idea what Cyril is going to do, and until I see it, I can't buy into the fact that he's going to be able to navigate rough waters when he gets into them.
So you said, excuse me, I would cough right when I unmuted. So you said a couple of things that I really do agree with. We haven't seen what Cyril looks like in those dangerous moments when the pressure is being put on him, and pressure is something that's going to come up when we talk about the co-main event as well too. So I'm interested in seeing how he looks when he is in the fire in the early portions of this fight. I think there's going to be some exchanges in the first and second round that I believe are just going to be make or break moments for him if Ngannou lands cleanly. He doesn't even really need to land cleanly, as we've seen in the past, to put someone in a dangerous position. So seeing what he looks like in those moments is going to be a key piece that kind of sets this fight apart and tells us what we should expect from Gane going forward. My question and my concern is how his technical abilities match up with Ngannou's deficiencies, meaning that if Gane can stretch this fight out over 3, 4, 5 rounds, what does that look like from Ngannou who may not be, and I don't want to say he's not as patient as we only seen patient Ngannou once, and that was against Stipe who was willing to stand in those pockets and exchange, and he ended up taking the wrong end of a shot there. I don't think Gane is going to do that. He'll be moving more. He'll be using the distance deep into the knees, deep into the body, and moving a lot more than Stipe did. So what are your thoughts about how this fight will look if it gets prolonged? Will this play into Gane's favor, or does he also have gas tank issues? Because I've seen that come up too.
Well, the main thing is both these guys are really kind of more counter guys. They don't really hunt you down. They don't really press you like that. Like anytime Ngannou's pressuring, he's trying to get you to throw something at him. He's using the threat of his speed and his explosiveness to get you to throw, so he finds an easy counter. That's what he's trying to do. And Ngannou is moving around trying to set traps and find out your rhythm, so he can figure out when you're gonna put power on your shot, when it's just gonna be lighter shots, when you're figure out your timing so he can punch you between your shots, set traps so when you come in he can pivot out and leg kick you. He can step back, walk you into a pull counter. That they're both counter guys. So to a certain degree, I don't know that either one's going to get exhausted because I'm not sure who's going to be the one who's really going to spend a lot of energy. Ngannou is not a high volume kind of striker. He hasn't normally been. He hasn't had to be. He hits guys and they go out. And to be honest, Gane isn't really a high volume kind of guy. He kind of picks you apart and chops away at you. So the only way the gas tank is going to be tested is going to be based on the counters and leads people are landing. And for Ngannou's part, I would like to see him throw body head combinations. For some reason, all the heavyweights keep chasing Cyril around to throw big head shots and big leg head kicks, and I have no idea why they do that. You're not anywhere near his skill level, so trying to hit his head or hit him with the upper body is going to be very hard given his distance management, his speed, and his technique. What you would want to do is go to the body. He can't move his body. Kick to his legs, kick to his body. And especially in the case of Ngannou has legitimately world-class power. When you're a heavyweight, world-class power kind of travels inside of mixed martial arts and outside of mixed martial arts. So I would like to see Ngannou kick to his legs and throw body head combinations to see if he could affect that gas tank. Because it's very hard to catch Gane clean to the head, but it's not going to be as hard to get to the body. Now, you're going to have to take some shots in return. Your chin's going to have to hold up. But from what I've seen, Gane isn't the biggest hitter. If he was, he would have got Derek Lewis hurt way earlier. And even in that Lewis fight, Lewis had opportunities to get to the body. He just kept loading up for those big headshots because he knows all he needs to do is land one. So as far as Ngannou, his ability to break down Cyril and make him tired is going to be based on, can he make him move more than usual, which is going to mean he's going to have to pressure more. And it's also mean he's going to have to land to the body, land to the legs, and occasionally land to the head. Because if he's landing more, that means Cyril's going to have to punch back more, which is using more energy than he's used to. He's going to have to move more, which is using more energy than he's used to. And his legs and body are going to be getting chopped up, which means his gas tank is going to have some holes in it, which means he's going to be leaking energy and using more than he's used to. That's going to be it for Ngannou. For Cyril, it's kind of the same thing. If he's having to pressure you more, that means he's going to have to work harder because he's not going to be able to stop you. Otherwise, he won't be able to get into range. So it's going to be who can make the other person get outside their character. I would think, Ngannou would be the first one because he's shown to be over anxious at time. When he gets somebody hurt, he'll walk in a little bit. He'll try to follow up the finish immediately. So that'll give Gane opportunities to counter him. But really, being that they're both counter-based fighters, it's very hard for me to see that either one of them gets really worn out if they're not landing at a certain clip or landing a certain quality of shots. Like when Derek Lewis and Ngannou fought, they both weren't really tired at the end of those 3 rounds because neither one really did anything because everybody was waiting for the other person to lead.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays off. If you had to bet with both men being counter fighters the way you described them, who's the one that's going to actually end up leading?
I'd assume Ngannou because he has the power. I mean, he's going to lead to a stint either way. He is going to pressure, hoping to get Cyril to throw something early that he can counter big on, or counter, to the body, to the legs, to wear him down, to set him up for something big later. So I'd assume he'd be the guy who's going to be chasing early on. He could sit back, but generally when you're the puncher, even if you're not chasing, you're pressuring. And I also think that Ngannou's going to take some chances as far as getting into tie-ups and wrestling a little bit to see if he can physically bully Gane. Because Gane's been able to have his way on the ground and kind of reverse people and throw them down, but he's never faced somebody with kind of Ngannou's physical strength and his physicality. And I think they both know that in tie-ups or exchanges, one, it's easier for Ngannou to hit him if they're tied up, and 2, he can't physically bully Ngannou or just shrug him off or improve position when a guy's got that much of an advantage over you as far as his strength, his physicality, and his size and weight.
Good stuff there, sir. Good breakdown. So let's move on. And actually, before we do that, who's your winner and how?
I'll probably say Ngannou. It might be by decision. Stoppage seems really easy, but it might be by decision. To be honest, even if he doesn't knock him out, all he has to do is land shots to get attention. If Gagne's just chipping him up all 5 rounds, but Ngannou can land some big offense for about 2 or 3 of them, they're going to go with the big offense. If he can drop him or stun him or send him reeling into the cage, they're going to go for those rounds. You can outwork somebody, but when you outwork somebody, you got to clearly outclass them. And if Ngannou can land some big shots and land with even a fair amount of regularity, I think the judges are going to be swayed by the power and his physicality and give the fight to him.
Good stuff. I am actually leaning more towards Gane in this fight. I think he's going to go with the point scoring strategy, and I believe he'll do enough to win 3 rounds. Like, he may have some scary points at the start of the fight, but I think he's going to do enough to pick up the victory via decision.
Well, the one thing is he doesn't have as much to lose with this. I mean, right now he's on the good side of the UFC. They're still happy with him. They're still supporting him and building him up. Ngannou, on the other hand, has been in a very public spat with them. So he's got a lot right because he wants to do boxing. He wants to have some opportunities. If he wins this fight and can hold his own against a world-class striker, that once again keeps his title, sells him moving forward. But if he gets thoroughly outstruck and gets knocked out or basically quits from the amount of punishment, that's going to put a halt to his title reign, his momentum in mixed martial arts, and also any immediate ventures into going to boxing are going to go away because, I mean, it's just a bad look for somebody going to boxing, challenging the best boxer when he's getting knocked out or handled in mixed martial arts. Regardless of the caliber of the guy, it's going to affect the casual impression of who he is as a fighter. So he's got a lot riding on this, and I would think that he'd have to be beyond ready for anything. Because if he loses and he loses badly, the UFC is going to bury him. We've seen them do this before.
Do you think that he really does go to boxing if he picks up a win?
I don't know that the UFC will let him, but he's trying to create interest, and he's trying to create public interest and enough money where the UFC's hand may be forced. And I don't know that the UFC's hand can be forced. All I know is he's obviously not happy with his money, and he's looking for some better opportunities. And everything he's looking for is on the other side of this fight with him being victorious. Anything else is going to cost him his goodwill. He's already cost himself the goodwill with the UFC. It will cost himself the goodwill with some of the fans. And as far as paydays, you're coming off a loss and you're a former champion. Those paydays aren't the same as when you got the title. He just got it. He hasn't really had the chance to reap the benefits of being a champion yet. So I would hope that he's beyond ready for this and he's beyond prepared and he's willing to go through whatever he's got to go through to win this, because a loss for Gane, he was an interim champ. He lost the established champ. He'll move back up fairly quickly. A loss for Ngannou, I don't know, man. That's a different. You know what it's like when you're on the UFC's bad end and you have a crushing loss. It's problematic.
Good stuff there, sir. Let's move on to the co-main event, which is a big fight as well. I almost kind of forgot this fight was on this card, but we have the trilogy fight between Brandon Moreno and Deiveson Figueiredo. Sorry about that. The first fight ended in a majority draw in 2020. Second fight ended with Moreno getting the victory via submission in 2021. Now we're fighting for the third time. Looking at this fight, I actually just wrote my preview and prediction piece around this fight for Fanside MMA. Check that out. This should probably be coming out tomorrow, if not late tonight. But I am looking at this fight as it is Moreno's to lose right now. I looked at a lot of information about the previous two fights, and what I noticed was in the last, they fought a total of 8 rounds. And in the last 5 of those total 8, Moreno was picking up steam in a way that showed me he has more gas to offer over an extended period of time than Figueiredo does. I feel like Figueiredo is a early, I don't want to say a front runner, but he puts guys away quickly. He puts them in danger quickly. That kind of breaks down their confidence and allows him to go about his way. He tried that with Moreno the first time they fought, but Moreno fought back. And we saw what ended up happening with their fight in 2020.
Yeah, I don't think that fight was a draw, though.
It was majority draw, the first one.
I know it was a majority draw, but I don't think that fight was a draw.
Yeah, I thought that Moreno did enough to win it as well, too.
I mean, I see the point in it. I just don't think it was a draw.
Yeah, we can talk more about that in a second. But looking at this fight coming up, I just feel like Moreno's going to be able to weather the storm early, and he'll do enough. I'm actually picking him to stop Figueiredo at some point in the 3rd or 4th round. What are some of your thoughts about that?
The biggest thought I have, I made a big thread on this on Twitter a couple days ago. Basically, with Moreno, this is his whole thing. He's got the same issue Anthony Joshua has, Conor McGregor has to a degree. Jose Aldo has, but he's defensively sound, so it's not as much of one. Even Michael Chandler, Amanda Nunes. He's a very physically powerful. He's a very dynamic strong, athletic fighter who basically fights in spots. And usually in those spots of offense, he's able to basically essentially either wipe guys out, knock them out, or just finish them submissions after hurting them and taking them down and get into a position. He can just finish them. If you can get through the rough spots with him, when he's not exploding, he basically has these lulls. Same thing as Tyron Woodley too. They have these lulls in action where they're fighting, but they're not fighting with the intensity, the accuracy, or the aggression they were in those big spots. So maybe 3 to 5 times a round, they'll have this big spot of offense. The further you get along the fight, those spots get further apart and they get less and less, and allow you to have moments where you can just get by on out hustling them, because you get them takedown instead of using a butterfly guard or a slick reversal or submission from the bottom, they're just going to explode back up. You get to their leg, instead of them sprawling out and really working their way out, they're just going to rip you off their legs and start firing shots off. They're so used to ending fights and dominating fights with the threat of what they can do and with the actual result of what they can do, that they don't have a lot of success when they can't finish immediately. Then the person starts putting a jab on them, starts putting combinations, and then later, as the fight goes later and later, it becomes harder and harder to find those spots of offense to turn a fight. And that's basically what lost it to him in the first fight. That's what the first fight was competitive. He caught on him early, but Moreno scrambles, Moreno fights it through, Moreno fights you at every level. So if you don't finish him, he's going to get right back in your face. And if you don't finish him, he's not going to get hurt and back off. He's going to get hurt and keep going. So you have to put sustained punishment on him. And you have to be ready for the fact he's going to fight you in every sort of grappling exchange, every striking exchange, every position on the ground. You're going to have to work for it. He's just not going to give it up. And that ultimately allowed him to do enough work to get the draw. And then the second fight, where I think really the weight cut was really an issue. And if you're going to come in on unsteady legs and not have your chin and not have your energy levels completely ready, you can't fight in that manner. Because when you explode in these spots, you open yourself up for counters. You open yourself up for leads when you're recovering. And if you don't have that athleticism and that athletic ability behind you, you're just going to get punished and run over, which is exactly what happened in the second fight. What I believe is Henry Cejudo is now trying to measure him out a little bit, make him a little bit more poised, a little bit more control in what he's doing, to set up his shots and manage distance. So instead of him throwing big shots, punching his way into distance, which a lot of MMA fighters do, they throw strikes to get to the spot they want to get. Cejudo's trying to teach him how to creep and slide and step into the spots. So then instead of throwing 3 punches to get into the spot and landing 1 or 2, you can slide into the spot, throw 5 punches and land 3. And they're betting on the fact that with his power and his accuracy, he'll be able to finish if he can maximize his shots and minimize the energy he has to use to get to those spots and to land those shots. So I think it was such a bad loss, but if Deiveson can do that tightrope act between controlled and chaotic aggression, it really should be a fight for him to win. It's going to be a tough fight regardless, but it should be a fight that he can win because he's a better athlete, he's a bigger hitter, he's a better finisher. And as good as Moreno is, and as much as he's improved, Moreno's not really defensively sound. But you have to control the exchanges you have with him. And Deiveson is so used to blowing guys away that he let control those exchanges go into Moreno's favor. But now I think Cejudo's trying to rein him in a little bit to make it efficient. If you're going to explode in a big spot, you can throw 10 strikes. I need you to land 5 or 6 of them. I don't need you landing 3 out of 10. I need 5 or 6 out of 10. And if he's consistently landing 5 out of 10 of every one of those big explosions, I don't believe Moreno's going to make it through. It's really going to come down to, is the weight good, and has he mastered that balance between controlled aggression and chaotic aggression?
So let me ask this, because you mentioned Henry Cejudo a couple times, and he's actually my X factor in this fight here. What do you think he adds to Figueiredo's game in such a short time? My thoughts are around his ability to take Moreno down, because I was looking at the stats again from the previous 2 fights, and Moreno did a good job staying on his feet. So do we think that Cejudo does enough to help Deiveson get the fight to the floor? Because we saw that with Weili Zhang versus Rose Namajunas. She was going for more takedowns in that fight, at least early. So do we think that that'll translate over to Deiveson's potential strategy here on Saturday?
The first thing is, I know one of the managers who works for the Pit Bulls, so I kind of have an idea how they think. Because like he was telling me about, when I was telling him before Cejudo fought Moraes and all these people, I was telling him what I thought. He has my opinion. He's like, your opinion is right on line with Henry and Eric's. Like, you're seeing it exactly the way they see it. People get fooled by the sideshow aspect and the corniness aspect of a Cejudo, but he's very smart. You don't become an Olympic athlete and ascend through mixed martial arts the way he does unless you're some caliber of intelligence as it pertains to combat sports. There's two things he brings.
He's not dumb at all.
He brings an authority because he has firsthand experience, and he brings an authority because of his accomplishments. Against Wiley, all he did was he made her more patient. Wiley was trying, when in the first fight, for some reason, after fighting Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I can't say her name still, Wiley thought, I faced this world-class striker. I can get exchanges with Rose because I fought somebody who's a volume puncher, who's more accomplished, who's one of the best champions. I took her best shots. I can take Rose Namajunas. And before that fight, I told her, I said repeatedly, she has never really gotten hit clean in the face by a power puncher. And the first time she does, I don't think she's going to make it. And the first time she got clipped, she got dropped by Rose because she was standing in Rose's, she was standing at range with Rose, figuring I can afford to throw out these dummy shots or these naked kicks and naked strikes because I can handle whatever's coming back because I've handled it from all these other fighters. That was not the case. In the second fight, she showed more control and poise. She was setting up her stuff, and she was making Rose come to her because Rose was trying to recreate that dynamic finish, and Rose kept reaching, and Rose kept over pursuing, and that's what got Rose taken down, and that's what got Rose roughed up, and that's got Rose in like a 1-1 or 2-0 hole, depending on how you see the fight. Once Rose sat back and started making Wiley come to her, Wiley didn't have the physical tools to hunt Rose down, to control position, or to avoid her strikes, or do enough damage with the strikes she's landing, because Rose is a much better athlete. Rose has the much wider set of skills. It's kind of that way. I think Figueiredo has the better skills, and he has the wider set of skills. What he doesn't have is the cardio or the mentality to constantly work through steps. Moreno works through steps to land his shots. He's not quick enough. He's not fast enough to just jump in with a leaping left hand. He's got to pressure you. He's got to slide his feet. He's got to be in the right position so that he gets hit, but not hit the way you want him to be hit. So he can get in the spots where he can go boom, boom, come over the top. He can't just boom, boom, come over the top because he's so fast. That's the difference. What all Cejudo's going to do is rein it in. Instead of you starting from 3 feet out too far and using big explosive movements to get to your spot, because that costs energy. And not only does that cost energy, if you miss all those shots or that guy steps back, you got to explode again. So you use 2 big explosions, you ain't got shit done. In fact, you probably ran into shots, because as you fight a guy more and more, even if they're really fast, you start figuring out their timing, their spacing, their rhythm, so it gets easier to counter them. What Cejudo is going to do, from what I understand, what I'm thinking of is, Cejudo is going to make him go through the appropriate steps. If you're going to a takedown, you are going to set it up correctly with strikes. If you're going to throw a combination, you're not going to start the combination out here, because when you throw wide like that, you're letting him get your timing. The first shot's way too short. The second shot's halfway short. I know in the third shot, you're going to be right into the range, so I just step in and clip you. He's going to make him go through the proper steps so that he can maximize his physical abilities. All he's going to do is get him to go through steps, set things up, rein it in, instead of just looking for the home run shot. The home run shot will be there eventually, but it's kind of like Tom Brady might hand it off, short pass, hand it off. Then when the defense blows coverage, bomb down the middle. That's the same thing. It's not going to be a bunch of highlight reel movements. He's going to try to get him to fight with discipline, go through A, B, C, D, explode on E. And since now you're in range and now you're in position, you can maximize that explosion and really punish somebody instead of just trying to explode into spots and explode out of spots, which is what Figueiredo's been able to do. That works when you have a person who won't engage you in certain spots. That works when you have a guy or a girl who you hit and they get scared and they back off. Juliana Pena didn't back off. Kat Zingano didn't back off. They beat the hell out of Amanda Nunes. Moreno did not back off or get defensive. And in the second fight, he beat the hell out of Deiveson. So all he's going to do is try and get him to go through the steps correctly, be defensively responsible, and be disciplined in how and when he explodes with that offense. It's all strategical. Technically, you can't make that many changes right away. You can make some, but it's the same thing working with a combat sports athlete or a basketball player. I can't change your technique in a week or two. I can change how you see the game. I can change how you see the fight and have you make strategical adjustments based on that. I can do that quick. I can do that with a fighter. I can do that with a basketball player. I cannot change your technique like that overnight. That ain't gonna happen. But I can teach you how to read defenses and read offenses, so you have a counter, and now you see things you didn't see before, because now I'm slowing you down and forcing you to get away from your tools and actually run through the actual system or run through the game plan, instead of just, oh, I'm just gonna go and dunk on her. I'm just gonna land that right hand. No, you gotta set it up. You gotta set it up. That's all he's doing.
So who do you have winning and why?
I want to say Moreno. I like him. I think he's a really gritty fighter. In fact, it's probably going to be Moreno. I really don't think Deiveson should be fighting at this weight class, to be honest. I don't think he should be fighting at it. I think after that draw, he should have moved up. I think his goal was to move up and challenge for another title the next class, because he had that run. And I think staying at this weight class is a 50-50 proposition, because it just, I think it takes away from his ability to recover from explosions and maximize the explosions. But against my best wishes, I'm going to err on the side saying Cejudo has made enough of an adjustment, and due to his clout and his accomplishment, I think Deiveson is going to buy in. I think it's like Cejudo said, at some point he started running the show, and he needed someone who was above him, who could physically check him to say, no, we're going to do this the right way. And if he can just make slight adjustments, like if he can learn to maximize his expenditures and his offensive bursts, if he gets 25% better at those, and the weight's not a problem, I don't see how he loses. Because as good, like I said, as good as Moreno has, his boxing's improved, his setups, his combinations are a little bit cleaner, his transitions are cleaner. The fact of the matter is, a lot of success is based on the fact that Deiveson was wide open, Deiveson was dead tired, Deiveson was wasting energy trying to just finish the fight immediately. I'm not sure if he's prepared for a disciplined, in control, not in their technical, but more of a strategical Deiveson. Because he can ramp the power up at any time. But I believe he can go 1-1, 2-1 in the first couple rounds, and the last couple just sell out for the power. So I'm going to say Deiveson wins. I don't know if he wins by knockout. It might be a decision, and he might fade even late. But I'm going to say Deiveson either wins by decision or maybe submission.
Okay, sir. Those are some good thoughts there. Let's look at the rest of this card. What else stands out to you? Let's talk about Kay Hansen first. That's actually what I wanted to converse about, and we can talk about Rodolfo and go from there. So she's coming off of a loss. She's someone that a lot of people were really hyped up about when she made her debut into the UFC. She's coming off of a loss from 2020, so she's had a year to get better. She's still super young, man. She's only 22 years old, turning 23 this year. What are some of your thoughts, and what do you want to see from her coming into Saturday's fight?
Well, first of all, they're giving her a fight that she should win. She's facing an opponent who had some experience, but ultimately is a person who gets by on physicality, aggression, and their ability to back people up. Kay's a better athlete. She's a bigger hitter, and she's probably got a more accomplished skill set against a better class of opponent. So they're giving her a fight that should be easy unless she chooses to make it difficult. What I want to see from Kay is a little bit more poise in what she's doing and a little bit more nuance. She hasn't fought in what? It's been 6, 7 months, 11?
For Kay Hansen?
Yeah.
She last fought in November of 2020.
Over 2020, so I guess it hasn't been too long. I really just like to see a bit of a technical progression. In her fight over Jinyu Frey was having moments of success because Hansen was determined to impose her will on her and impose a pace on her. And then she kind of just outlasted her and then broke her down with the wrestling and the striking and kind of took over the fight from there. But I want to see her show a little bit more poise, a little bit more defensive responsibility, and maximize her physical tools. Not just, you can always impose your will on somebody, you can always try to overwhelm them. I just want her to set it up a little bit better because she's not the kind of athlete that just can walk through anybody. It's going to take her time to break someone down because she's not that dynamic. So her team needs to realize she is not an apex predator type athlete. She's a good, not a great one. And they need to start developing her to fight with the poise and the instruction and the nuance that a fighter who does not have one punch fighting power or super elite dynamic athleticism needs to fight with. So I want to see some poise with her. I want to see some growth with her. I do not want to see her get into heavy unnecessary exchanges or heavy unnecessary ground exchanges against somebody who's really not in her caliber, I think, athletically or technically.
Good stuff. So you expect her to win this fight. How about my boy, Rodolfo, exceptional grappler, coming in off of a win. He had to bounce back after his loss to Anthony Hernandez. So he picked up a win a couple of months later in July. What do you expect from him? I just want to see if this guy can fight for 15 minutes. That's it. That's all I'm asking. Can he fight at a decent pace for 15 minutes? But what do you expect to see from him?
Yeah, I like to see. I would like to see a little. Like I said, I like to see him be able to pressure a little bit more methodically without opening himself up to counters. I don't want him. I would like him to not feel the need to force or get the fight to the ground immediately. That's where Damian Maia separated himself from other grapplers. They would get themselves in positions where they had to force fights to the ground or waste energy trying to get the fight to the ground because they had no idea how to fight a distance or close or pressure an opponent without getting lit up. I would like to see something of that nature from him as well. I don't think his opponent is obviously not a top tier opponent. This is the kind of guy you start showing the growth and showing your tools against, because a loss against this kind of guy isn't doing him any favors. So I'd like to see him coming behind a jab. I'd like to see a little bit more slicker transitions between striking and between grappling. And I would like to see his ability to kind of press, or if he's going to step back and hit reactive takedowns, stand at range and bait someone in to get those easy clinch or the easy tie-ups that can get him to the ground without him wasting a bunch of energy. Because if you spend so much energy trying to get a takedown or trying to tie up with somebody, that's when grappling can become your worst enemy, because even though you're far and away better than someone, you need a certain amount of energy against this caliber of athlete and this caliber of fighter to finish. And when you're not finishing, that often means you're on the ground getting punched up, beat up, or worn down, which isn't A, good for his career growth, or B, good for trying to win a decision. So I like to see better setups and a little bit more methodical, more of a methodical nature in creating those takedown opportunities or those grappling exchanges.
Good stuff there, sir. I'm interested in seeing this card. The two main events, at least. I'm not too bought into the rest of the card, but we can always be thoroughly surprised.
It's a lot of fights that aren't really super appealing and aren't really going to change the direction of the divisions they're in. You know, they're literally selling this fight on the backs of Ngannou, Gane, and Moreno, Figueiredo. That's about it. There's nothing else on these cards. And that's not just regular fighters. They're all good fighters. They're all trying to make a living. They're trying to make their name, but none of them have made enough of a name where you should be filling out a card with fights at the top of this magnitude.
Yeah, we're definitely due for a great card. So let's kind of see what this plays out to this weekend. So Schwan, what's going on in boxing, man? I was looking around today, working on the agenda for today's show, and I didn't see a whole lot. So what's going on in boxing? What should we be keeping an eye out on for this week?
Well, I mean, people are still talking about the impending Crawford battle with Arum in court, about Bob Arum supposedly not supporting or promoting black fighters. And that's a long-standing thing. I already said my piece on how I don't think Terrence Crawford is a draw, and that had a lot more to do with it than anything Bob Arum did or didn't do against him. That's one thing. They have been announcing that Keith Thurman is going to be fighting Mario Barrios, who lost to Gervonta Davis at 140. He's going to fight Keith Thurman at 147. It's Keith Thurman's first fight back from the Pacquiao fight after about 2 years off. And he's going to be fighting Mario Barrios. It's going to be on a pay-per-view card. It's headlining a pay-per-view card, and the card is going to be $75 for that pay-per-view. And this is a fight that is not worth a $1 pay-per-view card. Thurman has not fought in 2 years. Barrios has never fought at welterweight. He was a 140 champion belt holder, and he lost to Gervonta Davis. So you have two guys who weren't big draws who are coming off of losses. One of them lost to a guy who operates at the lightweight limit. The other one's a guy who hasn't fought in 2 years, and they're going to charge people $75 for that pay-per-view. Boxing fans are not very happy with it, because the PBC, Premier Boxing Club or whatever, they were initially coming in to usher in a year of free boxing on free TV, where fans wouldn't have to pay pay-per-views to see big stars and big matchups. And now later on in their existence, they're putting a bunch of fights on pay-per-view that aren't pay-per-view worthy. Gervonta Davis, Isaac Cruz was not a pay-per-view fight. Mario Barrios, Keith Thurman is not a pay-per-view fight. And it's going to be yet one of the other things that kind of holds back boxing in its progression because, we're charging fans for things that they shouldn't be charged for. It should be a good fight because Thurman hasn't fought in 2 years. We have no idea what he has left. And, Barrios at least has some burn from fighting Gervonta Davis. So it should draw some eyes, but it's not a pay-per-view fight because neither one of these guys currently has proven that they're world-class at the 147 weight class. And the last thing is Shakur Stevenson may, in fact, get the fight that he's been asking for. Oh, man, I can't remember this guy's name. I got to look it up now. But Shakur Stevenson has been asking for a title fight versus Oscar Valdez, who's in the same camp as Canelo. And it's looking like Bob Arum is trying to settle that fight and make that fight happen. And that would probably be the biggest fight of the weight class. And it's probably a fight that Shakur Stevenson could use to help elevate himself to a possible pay-per-view level, or at least force his way into fights with some of the named guys who are a weight class ahead of him, such as Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, and guys of that nature. So that's a very important fight. I don't know that we'll get it, but it is a fight that will be, a big one in that division.
Okay, sir. That's all I had, man. We have a very light agenda for today because I feel like UFC 270 is going on, and that's really about it. So why don't you let everybody know what you are working on this week, sir?
I'm just I still turned in a Colby Covington's article, Caroline Kovacevic. I kind of talk about the good and bad about Covington style inside and outside of the cage. I do a kind of breakdown on Carolina Kovacevic, and at one point she was one of the brightest stars in the UFC, and then she kind of fell off and has really kind of ended her career. I know she's still fighting, but at this point in her career is in a real bad way. So I'm kind of breaking down where her camp went wrong, where she went wrong, where the matchmaking went wrong that ultimately led to her being in the position she's in right now. Before I hand it over to you, one thing I do want to say is this is when I try to give these tips out to fighters because, like, obviously I'm not a fighter, but I work with a lot. And something a lot of fighters need to understand, especially with the Kayla Harrison thing, a lot of people are saying she's not fighting the best and she should fight the best. But a lot of people in the UFC who fight the best, what do they always complain about? I'm not getting paid enough. I should get paid to fight the best. The fact of the matter is this is prize fighting, as you said, and there's a certain amount of legacy that matters that helps you make more money. But the key is to make as much money as you can before you have to kill yourself to make the biggest amount of money. More fighters should champion and be supportive of Kayla Harrison. And the fact that a lot of fans are not supportive of her lets you know that they have no concern for the fighter's well-being, financial or physical, because you should like to see a fighter win by getting a bunch of humongous paydays fighting pretty much nondescript opposition. Is it competitive? No. Is it exciting? No, but it's a fighter winning. And even though we see fighters win fights, rarely do we ever see the fighter win the fight outside of the cage. Most of them can't pay their bills. Most are begging for bonuses. Most of them are complaining they can't afford to have a family or stop fighting because they need whatever they get from the UFC. So to see a fighter in a position where they've got some acclaim, they've got an undefeated record, they've got numerous big paydays, and they haven't really had to take a lot of punishment. Once again, while from a competitive standard, it's not very attractive. The fact of the matter is, from a humanitarian perspective and just respecting her as a sportsman, I have to say cheers to her, because in this business, the humans involved in it rarely walk away unscathed, and they definitely don't walk away with a pocket full of money. And the second thing I want to talk about really quickly is last week main event, Chikazi versus Cater.
Dude, I totally forgot about that card. But go ahead.
I basically said, is it Giga or Giga?
Giga.
If Giga is who we think he is, he wins this fight going away. If he's a complete fraud, he gets beat by Cater and he tumbles down the rankings. Well, I think it was proven that while he can fight and he's durable, as far as being in the top 5, top 7 of fighters, he's a complete fraud. He fought a dumb fight. He fought a very uninspired fight, and he fought a fight that was dripping with arrogance, where he thought that he was just going to walk through Kattar. Now, I thought he could beat him, but at no point did I say he was going to walk through him. I said most likely if Kattar got through the first couple rounds, Kattar's pressure and his volume was going to wear down on him. And essentially that's what happened, except Giga was unable to get any momentum from the beginning of the fight to the end of the fight. It was basically one-way traffic. And for a guy who was calling out Holloway and saying Volkanovski is trash and Holloway's a burnout and Ortega's garbage and Yair Rodriguez is ducking him, for a guy who talked that kind of talk for the last 2 years to get so summarily dominated, not even just knocked out with a big shot or in a back and forth war, he was beaten the fuck up for 5 rounds. I don't care about what he hit Kattar with. The fact of the matter is Kattar just dominated him in every phase of the fight. To lose in that fashion to a guy who, in my opinion, still is in a top 3 guy in the weight class. All the top 4 guys in the weight class, I believe, beat Kattar as he is right now. And Giga couldn't do anything of any real note except take a beating and survive a beating. He didn't show any IQ. He didn't show any ability to adapt. He didn't show any courage in how he fought. And I don't mean that he was scared, but once he got taken down, he wasn't willing to really exchange or go after him anymore because he was afraid of being taken down again. And he's supposed to be a guy who's got grappling chops and wrestling chops. And he wanted none of that. He wanted no parts of Kattar in any grappling exchange or any wrestling exchange. So he basically was outclassed in every single aspect of the game. And he needs to go back to the drawing board and completely rewrite what he's doing. Because if you're not getting past Calvin Kattar and you're losing like that to Calvin Kattar, you're not an elite fighter. You're not a top 5 fighter. You're not a top 4 fighter. In fact, and the fact that he lost in a non-competitive fight essentially says he's nowhere near being a top fighter, and he has a lot of work to do. So it wasn't disappointing. I like Kattar. I didn't want to be right, but I still believe Kattar is there to be taken, but he's there to be taken by elite fighters. And I was fooled into thinking that Giga had that potential at this time. Maybe he has it as far as athleticism, maybe even has it as far as skill, but as far as IQ and poise, he does not have world-class IQ and poise. Otherwise, he could have turned that fight around. And he at no point was he anywhere close to turning that fight around. Even when Kattar was tired and getting hit a lot, he had no opportunity to turn that fight around. He conceded and capitulated to him from basically the first exchange on.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised with the way he fought as the fight went on. I thought that his strategy would be different. And it definitely didn't seem like that he and his corner were making any adjustments. I won't go as far as to call him a fraud. I will say let's see what he looks like when he gets the opportunity to retool and come back.
I'll say one thing: when you talk that kind of talk, and you haven't beaten a world-class opponent, then you're a fraud. Because he didn't say it's a good fight, it's going to be back forward, we'll see what happens. He said, I'm better than Holloway. I'm better than the best featherweight of all time. I'm better than the second best featherweight of all time. I'm crushing all these guys. Give me my shot. All he had to do was beat Calvin Kattar, and Calvin Kattar is the most vulnerable guy in the top 5 of the UFC. That's what he had to do, but he was the guy who's the most vulnerable guy. He's the guy who hit the ceiling when he faced a certain caliber athlete, a certain caliber fighter. He's proven his limitations. So you got the guy you want. You got a name. You got him coming off of a huge one-sided beating, and the best you could do is say that, hey, I got a good chin and I survived 5 rounds. Hey, Giga's tougher than me. He's a better fighter than me. I'm not arguing that. But you can't talk that kind of talk and then go in there and lay an egg like he did. He didn't have any answers. There were no adjustment from his corner. But when you talk like that, you as a fighter should have an adjustment. He didn't touch the body. He wasn't really feigning. He didn't really try takedowns of his own. He wasn't able to offer any submissions from the ground. He couldn't improve his position on the ground. I mean, he just got bullied, beat up, and walked down for the entirety of a fight by a guy, by his own admission, wasn't in his class. He said that. Kattar isn't in my class. I'm going to win this fight impressively and go on to get my title shot. Did he look impressive?
What he said after the fight, where he was like 9 times out of 10, he wins.
Yeah, and that nonsense. So people can say, well, that's harsh for you to call him a fraud. Did you, after somebody beats you like that, the first thing you say is 9 times out of 10, I win that fight? That's the guy you're standing up for? And the whole, well, those are fighters, and you say this now, and you're critical of them now. I deal with fighters, dude. I've had fighters send people to come beat me up in a gym when sparring because they didn't like what I said. I'm not like the rest of y'all. I can just say what I got to say regardless. Having a pro fighter wanting to fight me is not the worst thing that happened in my life. I don't want it, but it's not. I've already had that situation happen. It's not the worst thing in my life. He looked like he was Conor McGregor, prime Conor McGregor. He got beat up like the Conor McGregor who'd been out of the cage for 2 years. So you talk that kind of talk, you set that kind of table, you demand title shots, you have to go through. He didn't go through, and I'm just calling him out. I'm staying true to what I said. I said if he's who I say he is, he beats up Cater in a tough fight, but he wins impressively. But if he's a fraud, he loses, and he lost.
Very true, sir. Very true. So we're gonna go ahead and close out. Thank you for reminding me to talk about that fight. But we're gonna go ahead and close out. Schwan, go get your cat, whatever the heck is.
He just does this. He just gets ticked off and just sits around and sleeps all day, and then sits around and annoys people, knocks people's water over.
That's what they do, man. He knows you're taping, so he's like, I'm gonna make sure the world hears me. But we'll be back next week for episode 229. We're creeping up there in numbers, but thank you as always for everyone taking the time to follow and support our show. So we'll be back here next week. Thank you, Schwan, for all your commentary and thoughts on these fights going on. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for your support. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you find us at MMA Ratings. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
All you cat lovers, support us because this cat should be gone by now.
Have a good night.